Hello, everyone. I'm so excited to be on this stage. Do you guys know that like 2 nights ago, deadmau5 was on this stage? It was awesome. I still can't hear myself. So I'm Sam Harrison from Harmony. I'll be moderating and participating in the panel. I'm very excited to see you all here. What I want to do actually really quickly, do you guys mind introducing yourself and tell our audience, why do you care about DAOs?
Hey, I'm John. I'm one of the co-founders of SZNS. We're a platform for people to deploy NFT DAOs and collectively own NFTs, currently on Ethereum. I care about DAOs because I think it is one of the ways that people are empowered to actually contribute to organizations in a codified approach with tokens that create unique incentive structures. Happy to be here and talk about SZNS and why governance sucks.
Hey everyone, my name is Eric. I've been a long-time contributor to the DAO space. Started late 2018, 2019 when there was just one DAO around and you literally knew everybody in the DAO space. And currently helping Rarible DAO decentralize their efforts. And yeah, I like DAOs because we need better coordination mechanisms to make this planet a better place and a more human place.
So that actually brings up my first question as far as, well, let me actually introduce myself. With Harmony, head of ecosystem growth, and my job is to kind of run our DAO program. So I'm very interested in DAOs. I'm very interested in capturing what productive capability the DAO has. But let me ask this question to our distinguished panel. We mentioned coordination. Can DAOs actually coordinate? Do you have an example of both a DAO actually working, but more importantly, since we're in the misadventures in DAOs, one that went wrong?
One of the first questions I always ask people when they're talking about DAOs is like, can you define DAO? Because like, there's actually so many kinds of DAOs, and we tend to lump them into one category, like, oh, it's DAO. But actually, like, there's a ton of different varieties and structures, and they do need different names so that we know what we're talking about. And so, yeah, it's like a DAO like Uniswap, right? I mean, they mainly do grants. It's working pretty well. Token-based voting, they do grants, they issue money. Even Uniswap had a failure in a way where I think it was something like $20 million went to a team to do some sort of education program, and then the team disappeared. And, like, that happens. It's very different from a DAO that is trying to build a product or trying to build a community. And those, we call them the same thing, but they're like worlds apart in terms of what they do and their goals and like, all that stuff. So, yeah, I'd say some DAOs are working, but yeah, I mean, that's an example of like a pretty bad failure, but it's pretty simple, just losing money.
It's only 20 million. I mean, come on, that's like what,
I think it
2 buffer quorums?
It almost happened, right? It didn't actually happen. Like the funds got last minute got voted and shut down, I think.
Yeah, maybe.
I don't know. Yeah, but the threat model exists. Like, and I think there's always trade-offs. Like when you want to enable people to actually have meaningful participation, naturally you're going to operate slowly. And like, ultimately, what I guess one of the points I wanted to come and make today is I think a lot of crypto people who get really excited about DAOs are just like rediscovering corporate governance. Like when companies were founded and people were thinking about how to make good companies and make organizations run, like we've been figuring that out for hundreds of years, like maybe if not more, right? Thousands of years. But what's now unique is that you can reward people with tokens, you can incentivize them, and also you can codify how people participate. So you can set rules on what it means for one person to actually have 1 token per vote. And if you are going to go and take a plutocratic model, then you as a DAO can actually say, okay, what is a good measure of what it means to have a majority pass? Is it 75%, 85%? And let's say you even determine 85% is a sufficient quorum. Is that good enough? Like, there's already problems about like majority voting that we've already experienced in traditional political structures, and DAOs are nothing new. But the opportunity that we have is for us to create the best tooling possible. At least for Seasons, what we'd like to take is an opinionated approach on a few set of governance frameworks that we think would be most applicable to DAOs that are collecting NFTs. And I think Rarible wants to go into DAOs, and there's it's fucking hard work, but I think the opportunity for us is quite open.
Yeah, it's pretty big. So we have an example of a vote for $20 million that could have possibly gone sideways. And we have an example of voting that we don't know if that actually reflects what we are trying to accomplish with a DAO. One of the things you mentioned, which I thought was interesting, was that these decentralized autonomous organizations tend to move a little bit slowly. Can DAOs support the pace of crypto?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, like, we think they kind of go slowly, but in a way, some of them actually move much faster than centralized organizations. Like within Rarible DAO, we have a grants program, and in full transparency, we're still centralized. So we call it a DAO. We're not actually a DAO. It's very common in companies that are trying to decentralize. So currently, the granting process gets funneled, and it's a very centralized point where like decision has to be made by a small group of people, and it's slow. Like, people tend to kick things down the road. Oh, I'm going to review that next week, and proposals just keep moving on, and we have a backlog, right? But DAOs that are actually decentralized and they have something on chain, it moves fast. I mean, you submit the proposal, it's up for vote, it has an end period, and the decision has to be made. So I think there are a lot of benefits, and people think DAOs are slow because there's like this voting period and stuff, but it actually forces action, and it ensures that things keep moving. And I actually am pretty bullish about on-chain DAOs because of the speed that they can operate if they're structured properly.
Anything to add?
Yeah, I think like there is, in one sense, I think you can kind of argue about, let's say you have an organization and the leaders kind of make the most important decisions, which is kind of like what happens today with a lot of orgs, where the company or the leaders are on a whatever, 3 of 5 multi-sig or something like that, right? But you also have like big protocols like Compound that actually have and operate on a real like protocol-based governance. They use Governance Bravo, and they have, in order to actually make upgrades to the contract, it needs to go through a formal kind of governance process that they've set. And last time when they got hacked, it took them a week to upgrade the protocol, right? Because it needed to go through a formal proposal. But I think to Eric's point, yeah, because DAOs aren't necessarily tied to like some of the, I would say, operational BS that maybe traditional companies have to deal with, we can operate very quickly. Yeah. One
of the aspects that is more challenging is consensus building in the community. So that takes a lot of hard work. And in a centralized organization, like, you have the people at the top setting the vision, and people tend to just follow it, right? And within a DAO that's community-based, it's a lot more of people trying to rally people towards their visions, right? And you might have 3, 4, 5 different people with slightly different visions, and it's more about like lobbying, and that does take a lot of energy and a lot of time, and it's pretty exhausting, to be honest. But that is a community-based vision building, which is definitely slower than a centralized organization where you can just move and everybody listens to you and you go in that direction.
So since we are talking about misadventures in DAOs, some of the things that I've seen in Harmony DAOs and in many other DAOs, and this is actually true from everything from like a group project in school to very, very sophisticated, work teams at the office, that sometimes there are people who just want to ride on your coattails. What have you seen in DAOs where people are just trying to leech off of the productivity of other people, and how do we combat that? How do we cut the dead wood to make it sleeker, slimmer, more effective?
I guess, yeah. I think it's okay. Like take traditional stocks. Like you have people investing in projects because they believe in it, and they're in here for like the financial upside, right? They don't necessarily participate as a shareholder into the meetings, and that's kind of the structure that we built in the traditional world. And I don't think, yes, you can say that's bad, and then we want to change that with DAOs, and we have the opportunity to, right? So a DAO can create kind of their own rules for participation that kind of removes those like freeloaders, right? The free riders. But personally, I would say, that's kind of like a natural aspect of having like a free market, right? People can decide to participate and just get along for the ride. But if a DAO wants to create those like rules for the other peoples and remove free riders, we now have the ability to do so, and that's kind of what's exciting about DAOs. It's always about what kind of tooling can we build, what kind of infrastructure do we build for DAOs to operate on that is different from traditional companies.
Yeah, the way we've done it within Rarible DAO was a pretty structured reporting and accountability process. So teams and people would request funding to operate pretty independently, but then everybody, regardless of if you're a person asking for funding or team or project, would be on this reporting cycle. And if they don't report and they're not held accountable, then they don't get more money. So there's definitely the opportunity of like free riders trying to get some money, but it won't last very long because if you bake in strong accountability tools, then it ensures that people who are adding value are going to keep getting paid.
So this is interesting. People who are adding value will continue to get paid. One of the things that I've experienced in the various different DAOs is a problem of burnout, where you get a couple of people who are very, very enthusiastic about the mission of the DAO. They work, they build, but then they feel like they're the only ones in the room. And so they're just like, fine, throwing up their hands, I rage quit, I'm out. How systemic is this problem of burnout, and how do we combat it?
I mean, yeah, DAOs are very noisy. Trying to like herd cats towards your specific vision is exhausting. I'd much rather be a dictator and just be like, yo, we're going this direction, and people just like agree.
They agree or they get beheaded. That's how that works.
Yeah. So 100%, it's real. I think people get pretty exhausted working in the DAO space. Especially, I see people working for like 3-4 DAOs, and I have no idea because I work for like mainly one, right? And it takes all my energy. Building DAOs are very hard. So yeah, I think it's a tough problem. I think there are like groups springing up specifically focused on how to create a culture around mental health and like doing this sustainably, because I think it's going to be it's a rampant problem. People get super passionate about these things and they just like charge, and then they burn out and get tired, and then yeah.
Yeah, and you burn through. What do you think?
I'm burnt out. I'm just kidding. My investors, I'm kidding. Let's see. I think there's also kind of one aspect where like the burnout is real, but for like projects like Sushi, for example, they need to continue to make sure to find new talent, and at some point they're just going to have to deal with like the problem of, let's say, all of the token incentives are gone, right? Then if the people have been burnt out and left, how do you find sufficiently incentivized people who can fill the shoes of like such like crazy devs that made Sushi what it is today, right? And I think that's kind of going to be a pretty big challenge for DAOs. Yeah.
No, I think you're 100% correct. Because there's another issue about DAOs that we paper over because we're in crypto, so regulation doesn't apply to us, right? There is a default in many states, not necessarily all states, that if you are engaged in a common purpose with other people, you are part of a general partnership. And so if that common purpose, that organization is sued, they can actually sue and get access to and grab your personal property. Why would we want to do that?
Well,
That sounds fucked up.
actually, like a lot of DAOs, surprising number of DAOs have legal structures kind of behind the scenes. Some of them you don't even know about. It's not even public. But the whole general partnership thing, actually, I feel like my thinking around this has changed over the last like month even, and part of me is just like, you know what? Let's just wait and see till it happens, because it hasn't happened yet. The whole general partnership, oh, you can sue anyone for. I'm willing to take the risk personally. I'm like, you know, I just want to build a cool DAO, a world-changing DAO that's good for humanity, and you know, yeah. So that's one of the risks. Is like we brush up against the law. We're a general partnership, but I'm personally interested in seeing if we can test those boundaries.
No, I think that's a good point. Then the follow-up point. We've talked a lot about fractionalizing NFTs. We've talked a lot about sushi swap and incentives. We've talked about Rarible. A lot of the DAOs that actually work are DAOs that to become involved, you have to buy yourself in. For lack of a better term, you have to put skin in the game. But if we consider the promise of DAOs, this idea that anybody can join one, this idea that you can find your passion in a DAO and contribute to it, how does that work if you have to buy your way in?
Well, if we take the premise that DAOs are just another type of organizations that use token-based, structures, then I don't think passion alone entitles you to a position in the DAO. Like, if I'm we want to hire the best qualified people, right? Just because you're a passionate person doesn't mean you get to join the company. And I think it's okay for DAOs to be like that. And again, it's just about what does this individual DAO enable for its participants. One DAO can say it's open for everybody, right? So if I may do a shameless plug, just yesterday we launched something called the Trash Dao on our platform, where if you go to trashdao.xyz, if you have shitty NFTs, you can deposit it into the trash album and you get 69 trash tokens. And that's the only way you get the trash tokens.
Why not 420 trash tokens?
So the first Genesis piece was the 420, but after that,
Crypto,
it's
right?
just
You
69,
know the meme.
Yeah. But then I guess it's kind of like an experiment for us, because a lot of projects come out and they're like, hey, we're a DAO, but here's 20% to the team, 50% to the ecosystem, right? And then it's kind of just like very top-down heavy. We wanted to kind of create an experiment for people to maybe just start engaging by joining Trash DAO and using our governance framework to start participating as a DAO. And like, I guess, very transparently, our governance framework that we provide for the DAOs has like quite a bit of limitations that we're working on. But right now we support a simple token holder voting where we're a wrapper around like a Gnosis Safe and the SafeSnap module and reality.eth, so that people can create proposals on Snapshot, gets voted on, and it has execution on chain. And we think that's kind of like a very proper way to launch a DAO rather than going on a very trusted model. And to be transparent, right now our Trash DAO can only accept 5 contracts from like the biggest marketplaces like Rarible and stuff like that. But soon, hopefully, we're going to support like 5,000 plus contracts on OpenSea. We ran into an issue, and then, yeah.
Gas fees?
No. So we pulled a list of contracts from OpenSea, and like a lot of the contracts, they say they're 721 compliant, but it actually doesn't follow the spec. So it messed up with our backend. OpenSea, your APIs are great. Yeah, but we would love to be able to pull more.
Yeah, we can.
Yeah.
So we're trying to talk about the misadventures. Talking about DAOs that have failed. What is your number one cautionary tale about a DAO that has failed? For reference, as you think about it, the early .com bubble and burst. You had Pets.com. You had, what was the other one? Web TV or something like that. Massive investments into these projects. Billions of dollars of valuation. Nothing. What's your example of a cautionary tale that says, hey, maybe we need to be very careful when we think about doing a DAO?
I would say avoid DAOs that aren't DAOs. I mean, I don't know what the percentages are, but vast majority of DAOs today are not DAOs. Yeah, if you want to be part of the movement, be part of a real DAO. But that's really hard, you know. Like I really empathize with new people coming into the space because there's very little information and it's hard to differentiate like what's a DAO that they can actually trust. That's one area I was thinking would be really nice to have regulation around, to like actually like, yes, you're a certified DAO. Even if a DAO was to certify, you know, we need some sort of mechanism to basically help people differentiate, you know, what's a DAO and what's not a DAO, like a Tinder app or something. You just swipe or
a blue check.
Yeah, blue check.
Who got rugged by Anubis DAO?
Ooh, Anubis DAO, anybody?
No? Okay, yeah. So that DAO got a lot of hype, and then one person controlled the address to the DAO, so he, you know, rugged them and ran away with the money. So, you know, I think maybe that's to Eric's point. Maybe that's not a DAO, right? But people kept calling it a DAO, right? So I think it's we need to start generating some educated consensus about what makes a DAO. Yeah.
No, I think that's a really good point. All right, so we just have a few minutes left. So I do want to allow our audience to ask a question or two. So think about your questions, and I'll pick a random hand. But as the audience is thinking about their questions, what if you could give advice for anybody who's joining a DAO to avoid the misadventures? What would be your number one key piece of advice?
That's a tough one.
And if you say don't, that's not an answer.
Get familiar with the DAO tools. You know, Moloch DAOs and, you know, Aragon DAOs and SnapSafe and whatever it is. There's a handful of tools. Get familiar with those and try to understand for the particular community you're working on, like, how's it structured? Look at the docs, you know. Any good DAO should have well-documented information on how it's structured, like who has voting power. You know, I'm personally not a huge fan of DAOs that just use pure token-based voting, so, you know, like, that's one thing to consider. Like, if it's just a plutocracy, like, do you actually want to spend all your energy working for a plutocracy where, like, the rich people and everyone who has a bunch of money make the rules? Like, I don't. I want to work for a community that represents me and the builders and people adding value. And so, you know, get to understand the DAO, like how it actually works, and think critically about, do you want to spend energy working for the people?
So it sounds like you're saying do your own research.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, definitely.
Very good crypto advice.
I would highly recommend depositing a trash NFT into the Trash Dao. We right now only have 15 NFTs deposited, so currently I'm NGMI. Please.
The shill floor is a couple of houses down.
Sorry. Okay, no more. Yeah.
All right, so we have time for one or two questions from the audience. Do we have any questions from the audience? All right, here we go. So the question is, there are DAOs that are not DAOs. Explain.
Yeah, so I would say who controls the treasury? Like, DAOs typically have a pot of cash or tokens or something like that. So really the difference is like how does funds move out of there? So if it's based on a voting process and it's on chain, then I would consider that a DAO. If it's you know, Snapshot is not on chain, and then you know, a few people in a multisig send out the funds, then I would be concerned about that. That's the main difference.
So I would challenge that. I would say, let's say you can imagine a DAO that has the traditional vote on Snapshot and then have like on-chain execution. Let's say it's for this purpose, just completely decentralized, right? Let's say the DAO votes 75% majority vote to say we appoint one person to be our fucking dictator. I think there would still be a DAO. They just chose to have a different governance model, right?
I would not trust that, though.
Yeah, but in terms of defining what a DAO is, though, right? I think it's, but actually no, but again, this is just kind of like an argument, right? One person can then come to me and say, well, the idea of a DAO is that it's a decentralized autonomous organization. When you appoint a complete leader, maybe you no longer become a DAO, right? But again, I think it's just something that we as a community need to have a educated kind of consensus around. And right now, I don't think we have that. It's too new.
For me, the things that are not a DAO, I look at three main pillars that seem to be consistent across all the various different types of DAOs. And that's the DAO has a shared interest, they have shared assets, and they have shared responsibility. And one area that we don't think about often is the fact that information is an asset. And so if you have people inside your DAO that have information that the rest of the DAO does not, and they're asking for people to vote, and they have this asymmetric informational load, I think that's problematic.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. That was a good question. Thank you. Another question. Over there in the blue shirt.
With consideration to anonymity, how do you see reputation evolving through DAOs?
So the question is, in the consideration of anonymity, how would you consider reputation to be important in DAOs?
I'd love to see better tooling and infrastructure for building decentralized social identity, that you start building reputations so that even anons then will start to care about kind of the reputation they've earned, and yeah.
Yeah, great question. I would second that. I think there's a lot of there's a long way to go to get there, but I think that's the ultimate, right? Just have a DAO where you don't need to dox yourself. You can have anonymous people, pseudonymous, and have reputation baked in. So as you contribute, you gain voting power, and that's definitely in opposition to the token-based voting, which is just based on token weights.
Plutocracy, yeah. It's actually an excellent question, and I think we've had a conversation about this or two. I think so, yeah. It's almost like you fed me this question. So this is Devin. He's a good friend of mine. We do work together. And it's one of the things that I'm working to build in Harmony is this idea of reputation. What I want to do is take something like Coordinape that allows us to give peer-based bonuses or recognition for their work. But instead of a token that has maybe some monetary value, what we have is a token that is non-transferable. And so it stays in your Web3 wallet. So if you're in a developer DAO and you make 5,000 developer tokens, you can go anywhere with that Web3 wallet, carrying with you that reputation of the work that you did before. And then you can build in voting mechanisms where maybe it's not a one-to-one, maybe there's some sort of quadratic voting, but the idea is the decisions that DAO is making are actually going to start being based more and more on the expertise of the members of the DAO. So thank you, Devin. That was an excellent question. All right, do we have time for one more? I think so? No? All right, we're going to wrap it up. You guys, oh wait, I think we have to wrap it up? Yes, we have to wrap it up. So feel free to grab the panel later, ask them for their autographs, because they're very, very smart. Ask them for their seed phrases, because they're not that smart. Thank you guys all for paying attention, and have fun in your misadventures in DAOs.
Thank you.